What an opening to free agency 2025 it was. We've got quarterbacks on the move, Darnold, Fields. We've got big-time trades and some very aggressive franchises now with young quarterbacks. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Pause now and subscribe because it helps us out tremendously, and it helps other people find the podcast as well. And if you already are subscribed, which I know a lot of you are, hit the thumbs up. If you're on YouTube, let us know you stopped by. New to the program, welcome. We love you. We appreciate you as well. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you are listening to this podcast. And we've got to start, Matt, with the quarterbacks. And let's go to I think the prize in free agency. What a career turnaround for Sam Darnold. And to be honest with you, I've got to commend the Seattle Seahawks because I don't know what their wide receiver core is going to look like after trading DK Metcalf. We already knew about that move as of our recording yesterday, right at the start of the legal tampering period, as it has become known. They didn't have a quarterback, and they traded away DK Metcalf. And now they have 5 picks in the first 100. Mm-hmm. And now they got themselves they got 7 years younger at quarterback, first of all, from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold, even if you think those guys are in the same tier. And they might be. It might have been a lateral quarterback move. They got 7 years younger. And I thought it was a great deal to get Sam Darnold on a 3-year contract, $33 million per year. That's a true middle class. And to be honest with you, not a big raise over what we saw Baker Mayfield get a few years ago, which is, I think it's a phenomenal move. And I think there's a chance that, like the Vikings, after they moved on from their veteran quarterback where they were kind of treading water and not really a really good football team, but not a bad football team, and kind of playing for the middle every single year, they got away from that and then had 14 wins with Sam Darnold as their quarterback while also drafting a guy. And I think the Seattle Seahawks are the reason I love it is because they got 7 years younger. At worst, they're probably in the same tier of quarterback, and they got a draft pick on top of it. And if it crashes and burns, okay, you got a better quarterback class next year. Or maybe you win 14 games like the Minnesota Vikings did last year with Sam Darnold, and you got yourself a smoking deal of a quarterback.
Well said. I agree with all of it. And I got the impression Geno really wanted to play for Pete Carroll to finish out his career. So they kind of did him a favor and got younger, as you mentioned. I thought the Darnold contract would be higher than that. I'm not accusing them of anything, but it sure feels like they knew they were getting Darnold when they traded Geno, which was well before the tampering period. But
you might have talked a little early. I don't know.
Maybe.
The rules, nobody would do that, Matt.
Maybe a false start. Who knows? But that's fine. Again, if he stinks, if he falls on his head, if he can't handle pressure or whatever, go young to the quarterback market next year. It doesn't hurt you all that bad. I would think all these draft. Go ahead.
I just want to say it's a 3-year contract. So, okay, worst case scenario, now you're bad. You draft the quarterback early in the next draft, and then Darnold's around for the second year of his deal as a stopgap, and then you cut him before year 3. There's no downside to this, I don't think.
Not really. No, it's not that much money. It's not that restricting at all. I would imagine you mentioned all those picks. I bet maybe all 5 of them are on offense. Just interior O-line, receiving talent, and that's fine. That's great. I think the defense is in really good shape. It's a defensive-minded head coach. You can have a young offense for a quarterback you have some faith in. And frankly, I don't know if I've said this, but I'm a Darnold fan. I think it's a little bit short-sighted just to say the great coaching staff at Minnesota turned Darnold into a good player, and it's a mirage, it's a fugazi, and he threw to Justin Jefferson, and I'm like, yeah, but his O-line was horrendous, and of course the last 2 games leave a terrible taste in your mouth. And if you rewatch them, Week 18 he was pretty bad against the Lions. In the playoff game, they didn't block a soul. I mean, no one's telling me Mahomes was bad in the play.
I was just going to say that. We saw the same thing happen to Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So can Mahomes not handle pressure like that? And for Darnold, Darnold was so young coming into the league as well, and was in bad situations left and right.
Horrendous, right?
Finally goes to some organizations that know how to coach up a quarterback, coach up an offense. And now he's kind of been in that Shanahan-McVay tree for multiple years. And by the way, the guy who was his passing game coordinator under Kyle Shanahan in his year with the 49ers, Clint Kubiak, is now the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks. And so instead of like teaching the new offense to Geno Smith, well, now you have a guy who actually has been playing in the similar scheme for a couple of years in Sam Darnold. So all the fits really come together. I really like this move. And to be honest with you, being that Darnold was the number 1 quarterback on the market. Now, look, it's not prime Peyton Manning out there or anything like that.
Sure.
But I'm surprised
he might be the answer, though.
Right. But the money they had to spend on it wasn't crazy. There's defensive linemen making more money than the best quarterback in free agency that had multiple suitors. And so that's where
pretty darn good last year.
It's not a bad number that they signed him for. And here's the thing is, he didn't go to the Steelers, and neither did Justin Fields.
Nope.
So the Steelers still need a quarterback, Matt. Justin Fields is headed to the New York Jets on a 2-year, $40 million contract. So $20 million per year for a 2-year deal for Justin Fields, 26 years old. Sam Darnold, still only 27. He'll be turning 28 this season. 3 years, $100 million. That's $33.5 million there. I'm just
real quick. I need your impartial opinion on that contract. Just the contract itself. Fields to the Jets, 2 years, 20 per.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
I kind of lean that way too. Right.
I'll put it this way. I like the Darnold contract better.
Me too.
The Fields contract is a lot, and it's short. So if he's great, you got to re-up him again soon. And if he's bad, that's a lot of money. 30 million of it guaranteed. So that's guaranteed into year 2 of it. And so if it's a disaster, it screams a team that probably doesn't want to draft the quarterback high, even though they still could. Again, it's a 2-year deal. And they need
to be Tyrod Taylor's a nice guy to be with them,
Yeah. Aaron Glenn coached against Fields early in his career. So he probably thought, man, it's even if the passing game is a little weird sometimes, it's just really difficult to defend a guy that can run like that. And I could see why the Steelers weren't jumping at the bit for that. But I wonder if the Steelers were willing to do the Darnold contract. And then I wonder if the Steelers they were so fine with Russell Wilson that it's like, we're not going to bid on another guy because we're fine with Russ too. And then there's Aaron Rodgers out there. I'm not really sure what the Steelers are doing because they're almost letting the league decide what they do. And I don't know if I like that.
No, I don't love that. Trust me, the people around here don't like it at all. They think they're just sitting around doing nothing. I do think what happened with Fields was, I think he wanted to be pretty much guaranteed a starting spot. And I think the Steelers' number was lower than the Jets' number because I know they talked all weekend, and he decided, I'm at least going to test free agency. Knew the Jets are out there, and I had so many conversations of Fields versus Wilson, and I leaned towards Fields, but I'm not going to be brokenhearted if neither one ever comes back to Pittsburgh. I mean, I don't wish anything bad on Fields. It's not sour grapes from a Steeler perspective, but I don't know that this is going to go well for the Jets. Like, it's worth the risk, but I don't expect in that market with how they're built for that to go wonderfully.
With everything that's gone so weird with them, especially at quarterback, it's not like this is the thing. It's like, oh, cool, we did it, we got it done.
Yeah, he fixed. Right. It's worth a shot. I mean, and I'm rooting for him. He's an easy guy to root for. But I thought the money was a little high, but it's fine.
Don't be shocked if the Jets are drafting high again. And then again, that's the thing is Justin Fields won't prevent them from drafting that guy next year too. So this isn't a 100%. Long-term expenditure for them. And they had to pay more than the Steelers probably to get him away. So that's That's what they had to do, and that's what they did. The other quarterback movement out there, Kenny Pickett gets traded to the Cleveland Browns, which is interesting. And I wonder if that was part of I don't know who to credit for this, but I saw a funny thing on Twitter, which is basically like the selling point to Myles Garrett, not only $40 million a year, but like, hey, what if we get you a Super Bowl winning quarterback? And he's like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Like, all right, meet Kenny Pickett, Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Doesn't really move the needle for me much, to be honest with you.
Dorian Thompson Robinson. I love this deal for the
Eagles.
For the Eagles, because the best part of the whole deal was the 5th round pick.
You got the pick, right. Yeah,
I
think McKee's better than Pickett.
Easily. The Eagles stay winning, man. That was a shrewd maneuver, a smart maneuver. They get a 5th round pick. They get an athletic quarterback to be the number 3 behind McKee. McKee's their backup, and
I think
the Browns are going to start Kenny Pickett. Right. Is that their answer for the Browns?
I don't. It wasn't going to go down this road because my co-host and I kind of got into this on Steelers Nation Radio because the trade happened immediately, and of course there are Steeler ramifications with Pickett.
Yeah,
and I'm like, this doesn't really move the needle for me. And he's like, I think that's going to be their opening day starter. I'm like, really? I mean, you don't think it's going to be Kirk Cousins or Shedeur Sanders or Ward? Yeah, I mean,
maybe it would make sense if that was a precursor to drafting a quarterback too.
I mean, he might be the starter, but they can't look at him like their problems are solved.
Right, yeah.
Yikes.
It's like the Fields thing we were just talking about, except for magnified times 1,000. If that's your
I mean,
right, yeah.
But yeah. And I can give some insight on the Steeler quarterback stuff too on the other side. And
okay, yeah, let's talk a little bit more. A couple more notes on the quarterbacks. Some other quarterbacks signed, and we know who now is the competition for Anthony Richardson with the Indianapolis Colts. Vikings and Patriots super aggressive on day one of free agency, and some other big signings that does move the needle and shift some power around the NFL next. Today's show is sponsored by Betterhelp Online Therapy. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. But with Betterhelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. And come on, we spend money on gym memberships, and we spend money on healthy foods, and we spend money on so many different things, but sometimes you forget to invest in the most important thing, which is your mental well-being. And your well-being is worth it. So visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. So to finish up the quarterback segment, we've got Daniel Jones on his way from the Vikings, and that was a weird one for the Vikings. He kind of hung out, and we thought he would be the veteran to stick with J.J. McCarthy, but he goes on a 1-year, $14 million contract to compete for a starting job with the Indianapolis Colts. Zach Wilson goes to the Miami Dolphins on a 1-year, $6 million contract to back up Tua. Joshua Dobbs goes from the 49ers to the Pats, 2 years, $8 million to be a veteran backup for Drake May. And Nick Mullins is on his way to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which means Mac Jones is still out there, as well as another former. We're seeing all these guys hit free agency from that 2021 class. And so Mac Jones is still out there as well. Is he a Steeler? Who's going to be the Steelers starting quarterback, man?
Oh, so a couple things there. I guess I'm fine with taking one more flyer on Zach Wilson, but even $6 million for him seems like a lot, but at least address to his backup, fine. I am really interested to see who the Minnesota veteran will be. I mean, could Kirk Cousins land back there? Or I don't know. I mean, maybe there's something interesting brewing there. I don't know.
So we have Cousins who's not quite available, right? And then there's Aaron Rodgers, and then there's Russell Wilson. Is there anybody else that's like, okay, this is a starter for a team today?
I don't think so. Because I really think Steelers comes down to Wilson versus Rodgers. And I guess Rodgers had a really good talk with the Giants today, for whatever that's worth. And I don't even know if he's been released by the Jets. I feel like I should know that. I've been talking about Rodgers like crazy, but I think he might still, they might not have officially released him, but they gave him permission to talk. I don't know exactly what's going on there.
Interesting.
My hunch is the Steelers prefer Rodgers over Wilson. And when I went to bed last night, I felt pretty confident there was going to be Rodgers, but I prefer Rodgers, but part of it's selfish because I want to be at training camp with him and see him and Metcalf and Pickens and the shenanigans that go on and just be around him in the lunchroom and see how crazy he is and and I think he's better than Wilson.
Do something different. We already saw it with Wilson.
Right. I'm pretty sure that's not good enough.
Right. Exactly. So I'm kind of rooting for that as well. Aaron Rodgers with a stable organization in the Steelers, chucking up some deep balls to DK Metcalf.
Yeah, he throws over the middle, and I mean, I think he's better than Wilson. I don't know who would disagree. And what happens in Tennessee? Do the Giants land a Wilson or a Rodgers? Maybe. Tennessee just seems like they're doing nothing.
Yeah, in the top 3 teams in the NFL draft still need quarterbacks, and at most there's going to be 2 drafted there. Cam Ward feels more and more likely for the Titans, right?
Maybe. I kept thinking the Giants would get the 1, and maybe they still will. Sanders, to me, does not seem like a top 3 pick.
It seems like that gap is growing. Sanders sliding, Ward more and more likely to be the first pick.
I agree with all that. And maybe a team like the Raiders that only have Geno Smith that's 38 years old or whatever take Sanders or whatever.
Yeah,
here's another one.
The Jets in those teams that are kind of like the Giants are sitting there and the Browns are sitting there like they need a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
For now and the future.
I think Cousins will fill some spot, or maybe it's a backup, but I mean, I think he'll move.
And then you have the Jets and the Raiders that did something, but it's not such a preventative move that they wouldn't draft potentially Sanders if they really like him, but they know they're in a weird spot where they might not have the opportunity.
Like, I can't believe like the Steelers are just going to be like, oh, we'll take Sanders at 21, like, or trade up for him. Like, I don't see any of that happening.
What if Sanders is there at 21?
Maybe.
Sanders and Rodgers, that would be an interesting dynamic.
There'd be more drama. Maybe Dion could come to camp, and it would make for good radio for me. I can tell you that. Let me throw one thing at you, because I mentioned this to a couple Colts people that are media that, when I was in Indy, I didn't talk to their head coach or GM or owner. I'm like, do you think Richardson's fallen out of favor that they might trade him? And nobody said no. They kind of went, Like when he took himself off the field, which I think is so old school and kind of dumb, he burned a bridge or two,
Yeah, it's probably a situation where it's too soon because you can't move off.
It has to be too soon. How do you draft him and not think he's raw and need work?
Right, and then you're not going to get any more back for him right now because it'd be viewed as damaged goods, and a team would be swooping in and getting him for whatever, a 4th round pick, right?
It'd be like the Trey Lance trade, probably.
Right, unless the team's offering like a 1st round pick, then you'd be like, yeah, let's get out of here because we're not sure if he's mentally ready.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not what the offers would be. And so whatever it is that you could get for him is probably the same you would get for him next year. So it is only downside to trading.
Because the Steelers get him for a 4, I would not trade him for a 4 if I were the Colts. I would try to revitalize him.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. So there's almost no scenario where it makes sense for the Colts.
Agreed.
And
but no one kind of thought I was crazy for mentioning that in Indy. That could he be on the move?
You have to check in with that. I assume they got calls.
I would think. I mean, especially after Jones gets locked up. I would think Jones is a leader in the clubhouse to be the opening day starter.
I don't know. 1-year deal. I think he's just good enough to still lose that competition. I mean, obviously, he's more than Anthony Richardson was, but Richardson going into year 3 should be much more ready after this training camp.
It'd be a pretty strong indictment on Richardson if he loses the job.
And if he loses it, then that's done. Right.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. You got to beat him out.
So the Minnesota Vikings, maybe
they were interesting.
Most aggressive teams on day 1. They lost Sam Darnold, but you know what they added is a pair of starting defensive tackles. You got Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. Allen on a 3. This is a really weird one for Washington. So I
don't understand it at all. You mentioned it yesterday.
Well, I didn't see the Jonathan Allen portion of it because I thought Jonathan Allen was viewed. I thought Jonathan Allen was viewed as more damaged goods and would get like a 1 year, $10 million contract. He got $20 million a year for 3 years. So he got a 3 year, $60 million contract. You released him in Washington so that you could pay the same amount of money you were already paying Jonathan Allen, who's a better player, to bring in Javon Kinlaw instead. And so I don't understand that.
It's bad, like you said.
Right. He's not a good player, and he's been hurt a lot in his career, and he's really inconsistent, and he's 320 pounds and is not good against the run. He's just an odd player. So Jonathan Allen goes to the Minnesota Vikings for 3 years, $60 million. They kept Byron Murphy, who got a lot of money, 3 years, $22 million per. So $66 million total on a 3-year contract for cornerback Byron Murphy. They brought
Sounds
in
like Hargraves basically signed too. There's been reports, but it's not official. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Ryan Kelly, the center, goes from the Indianapolis Colts to the Minnesota Vikings. Isaiah Rodgers, another cornerback, they signed for a 2-year, $11 million contract. And
they brought in Will Fries, Kelly's buddy.
There you go. Yeah. That was
and kept Aaron Jones.
5 years, $88 million.
I think Fries is a very underrated player. You can kind of look at him on that Colts line and be like, I know who Kelly is. I know who Nelson is. Fries is just the extra guy, but I think he's a good guy to invest in right now. And a theme of the league, too, is I don't think anyone's looking for interior O-line help in this draft. I mean, they are spending a lot on interior O-line. The Bears are the best example. But the Vikings' interior O-line's been a big problem for a lot of years. Yeah, I don't know what Kelly has left, but you had those two Colts that know each other, and bring back Aaron Jones and bring in two defensive tackles, keep Byron Murphy. I think the Vikes are a winner.
A lot of guard money out there, which is kind
of a lot of guard money. Yeah.
And by the way, we just talked about the Colts quarterbacks, and good luck. You just lost 40% of your starting offensive line too. So.
Yeah, everyone has them like taking Loveland or Warren in the first round. I'm like, you just realized your offensive line is getting decimated, right? It was kind of old to begin with.
The New England Patriots may be the most aggressive of them all. Tons of money being spent from numerous teams. What moves could come as well next? This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you are going to get any money back at all. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. Focus on what you do. Let the experts do what they do at TurboTax. An expert will find every deduction possible. File every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. And so there's a correlation here between the two most aggressive teams in free agency. It was the Minnesota Vikings and the New England Patriots. And what do they have, Matt? Young, cheap quarterbacks for the next 3+ years, right? That they really love. And so what do you do when you have a young, cheap quarterback? You can spend a lot of money around them because you don't have to spend $50-60 million a year on your quarterback for a while. And you hope they're a star and you want to build around them. The New England Patriots went big, the biggest non-quarterback contract. 4 years, $104 million, 26 per for former Eagles defensive tackle Milton Williams. They brought in Carlton Davis as well on a 3-year, $18 million contract. A lot of familiar players to the coaching staff as well. Harold Landry, who Vrabel had in Tennessee, edge rusher, 3 years, $43.5 million. Robert Spillane, linebacker from Las Vegas, 3 years, $33. Morgan Moses, there's your stopgap offensive tackle. You could still draft one at 4 if you wanted, but now you've at least got yourself an offensive tackle, a veteran, 3 years, $24 million. And when you look at some of the other offensive line contracts, $8 mil for, I don't know if he'll even play for all 3 years of the contract, but $8 mil for Morgan Moses. If he's healthy, he's a better player than Dan Moore, who got like what, $88
Right,
million
right.
or whatever it was, like that.
He's a better blocker, right? He's better
yeah.
at the game. Yeah.
Mac Hollins, and so probably added the most guys to that roster. And Vrabel's like, yeah, we need a lot more to make this a functional football team.
And one more quarterback note: they add Josh Dobbs, and there's been a lot of rumors that Milton could be on the move too. I mean, Dobbs is a perfect guy to mentor, super smart, all those things. Milton's another one that could be a sneaky trade for a 4th-round pick type guy.
There's your Steeler right there.
Oh, I would get asked about it all the time. I mean, I'd be fine with it with Fields, I said. But
how about Milton Rodgers combo?
Yeah, they're not very similar, but
no, but it doesn't matter. It's just a veteran and a young player behind a Hall of Famer.
Send Pickens to the Patriots for Milton and a bunch of picks or something like that. Interesting though for the Patriots. I mean, they had to spend. They have a ton of money. It's not easy to even spend it all, but so much of it's on defense. I mean, a really strong second corner, a green dot linebacker, the top guy in free agency at his position, Milton Williams. Landry wasn't cheap. And I heard Nate Tice say this, and it's something I've believed in otherwise. He's not the first one to say it, but he's like, when you have like the worst O-line in the league, it's so important not to get it to average or good, but just get it to not stinky. And Morgan Moses is a good step to getting an awful line to not being awful. I mean, just get me out of the awful bucket.
Right. And if you're the Patriots and don't ruin your young quarterback. Like you have to give that guy a chance back there. And if you're the Patriots,
on the block.
If you're the Patriots, you don't take let's say you want to go Ted McMillan or whatever other position at maybe Travis Hunter is there, whatever else you want to do it for, and you don't take an offensive tackle. Well, that was your only shot because you might not have another opportunity to really draft someone who could be a starting tackle for you. There might be some Ursery or someone like that in the second round.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of options after that. So I love that move. And again, young quarterback teams with young cheap quarterbacks going crazy in free agency. And it's a strategy to build the teams, and a lot of correlations between those two teams. Are there any other deals that jump out to you? Josh Sweat, big money contract. Love it for the Cardinals.
I love it for the Cardinals.
Add something, and obviously familiarity there with the coaching staff and how they will use Josh Sweat at defensive end, coming off a big performance in the Super Bowl. You look at the annual values here, the biggest contracts signed in free agency on a per year basis. We talked about Darnold and Milton Williams were 1 and 2. Byron Murphy was 3. Then Devontae Adams happened right before free agency and signing with the Los Angeles Rams at $22 million per year. And the next one up, top 5, is Dan Moore. And Steelers fans think that Dan Moore is a literal garbage can at left tackle. And yet the Tennessee Titans gave him 4 years, $82 million.
And they get to put Latham back at right tackle. I mean, like all those tackles had to swap sides last year that were in the first round. I love the Sweat pickup for Arizona. And I also like pairing him with Barrett Browning, who they signed, who I kind of think is a sleeper, looming there.
By the way, with Josh Sweat, like $19 million per year, 4 for 76. It's a good payday, but it's half as much as Myles Garrett's getting.
Yeah, it's not bad. I would probably I don't know if I'd rather have 2 of them than 1 Myles Garrett, but you get my point. Right. I mean, that's not a bad spending situation at all. I think worth noting is Houston's pass protection was so terrible, and they traded away Tunsil. Now they got a lot. They got a 4th. I mean, they got a 2nd, a 4th. I mean, there's a lot of picks coming their way. And I know it's not a big deal, but they traded away the former first-round pick Green just now, Kenyon Green, for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So I don't know. I mean, can you draft 5 offensive linemen and redo your offensive line? Like, you talk about not going to the draft for linemen. I don't know what the answer is there. And I know that they weren't thrilled with their offensive coordinator in terms of protection schemes. Maybe they just think it's more scheme than player, but they traded 2 of their prominent offensive linemen from a line that wasn't good at all last year.
They might be getting the ball out a little earlier this year. That might need to be because I don't know if the answer is going to be there at pick 25. Is that where the Texans are?
In that neighborhood, yeah. I mean, now they have a bunch. They could trade up for dudes, but they might have a couple rookies starting.
And by the way, do the Texans have the most like hybrid nickel safety corner defenders in the league.
Yeah.
Like a weird point with DJ Gardner-Johnson, but maybe that's the theme. Is like that's the way we want positionless defense.
I wanted to mention the Giants too. It doesn't sound like much, but Slayton to me is a quality player, opposite Neighbors. But and I'm kind of an Adebo fan as well. But Javon Holland to me is one of the best safeties in the league. I adore his game. I forget who I heard say this, but they said he's one of the only 5-tool safeties out there, that really doesn't have a weakness. I mean, almost most safeties have one thing they can't do great, and Holland can do everything great.
Holland getting 3 years, around $45 million from the New York Giants, which was kind of like, I've talked about this in the past with, it's almost like paint by numbers. Like GMs don't have that hard of a job anymore to figure out what the contracts are, right? Everybody signed for 3 years, $45 million. Like $15 million per was like the new number where it's like, okay, here, $15 million, you can have it. These are all the players.
Even like the backup quarterbacks are like Jared Stidham, 2 years, $12 million. Zach Wilson, 1 year, $6 million. Like, you just get the same deals, right?
There was at least a dozen free agents that signed for somewhere around $15 million per year, and most of them were 3 years. So 3 years, 45 was kind of the number of the day. Talanoa Hufanga, the Denver Broncos swooping in on a couple of 49ers defenders, and really sort of the way that Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw play. So you add hair on fire sort of players to Sean Payton's football team. And I think that was probably the allure there for the Denver Broncos, and the 49ers, kind of a team that just said bye to all their free agents. Like, everyone left. They added a backup blocking tight end and lost about 9 players from their football team. So it's all about future comp picks for the 49ers this offseason, apparently.
You beat me to it, because the Steelers and Niners are both just watching big contracts go out the door. Like the Steelers lost James Daniels, Najee Harris, Moore, Fields, maybe Wilson. Like they're going to be loaded with comp picks, but they need somebody to play now. And the Niners, I thought, was interesting too, kind of like the Texans. Like, I thought they were an offensive line needy team, and they're just losing offensive linemen left and right, and Juszczyk and blockers, and right.
Well, it's a perfect example too, because, cautionary tale, the team that wins in March is not necessarily the teams that win in September through January and February, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so slow down on crowning the most busy spending teams in free agency, because that's not how you build your roster. And on that note, there's some money that wasn't maybe the smartest money that was thrown around on day one of free agency, which is usually the case. And then you think about, okay, well, who did the Steelers and 49ers, for example, lose? Okay, well, Dan Moore, 4 years, 82. You talk about Justin Fields and what he got. You look
Najee.
at Najee Harris, which is a sneaky move. It's a great fit for Najee Harris going with Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. Aaron Banks got 4 years, 77. And it's like, well, they lost a lot of players, but those are also were deals that I don't think they should have done. So
they knew they were going every step of the way.
Right. A quick note. I'm glad you brought up Najee. I totally forgot about that. I wanted to bring up a note because I didn't realize this, but Najee Harris nearly went to Michigan to play for Jim Harbaugh. And apparently, I want to see if I can get the quote right. The quote was basically, he likes Jim Harbaugh more than Nick Saban anyway, but he picked Alabama because that's what you pick when you're the 5-star #1 running back recruit in the nation. And so Najee Harris now gets to play for Jim Harbaugh, even though Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines were the runner-up to the recruit that was Najee Harris. And so this is from Ron Kroichek. Harbaugh vigorously recruited Harris when the coach was at Michigan and the running back was at Antioch High in California. Michigan finished second to Alabama, but Najee often told me he liked Harbaugh a lot, and even more than Nick Saban, actually. So there you go.
And I think Antioch is in L.A. or very close to L.A. because
Najee... It's in the Bay Area, actually, not too far.
Oh, okay.
From where I'm at. Yeah, it's kind of like halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento, kind of.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, I knew he's from California and actually grew up homeless for part of his childhood.
Interesting story. Great dude, right? He just kind of wasn't as dynamic as you thought you were getting maybe in that first round running back, but a solid fit for the physical brand of football that the Chargers like to play. So I love the fit there.
He's an upgrade over Gus Edwards.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, to be that guy. Yeah.
What do you guys think? What was the biggest signing for you or your team let us know. There's a lot that's still going to happen. Still some trades, still some holes to be filled for these teams. And then we'll get back to it. And we've got a mock draft coming either to end the week or to start next week once the dust starts to settle here in free agency. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. Get those mailbag questions in at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a question in the YouTube comments as well. And subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.